This program is paid for by Jacob Media Partners. All opinions or statements expressed on this program are solely those of Jacob Media or its guests and do not reflect the views of WPHT or Odyssey. Today's program is pre-recorded.
Celebrating the life of your loved one is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givenish. When the matriarch of the Dalloway family died suddenly at 82 years old, Life Celebrations by Givenish stepped in.
They will make this the easiest thing that I know it's not easy, but they will make this as easy as possible.
Life Celebrations by Givenish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
I just know that my dad, who is in charge of everything, was not in charge of anything at that point when my mom passed. And again, just another shout out to this place for making it easy.
Turning tragedy into a celebration of life, no matter how hard, is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givenish. Life Celebrations by Givenish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
Jacob Media Partners invites you to spend an hour of your day celebrating your faith.
We acquire a fundamental right that can never be taken away from us. The right to hope.
In collaboration with the Archdiocese of Philadelphia and the Catholic business leaders of the Delaware Valley, including LaSalle University, First Trust Bank, and todayisagooddday.org. Learn from your leaders, be inspired by your neighbors, and find the power of grace in your life when you need it most. The spiritual Voices of Faith begins right now.
Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Voices of Faith on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT, along with my partner Jimmy Brown. I'm Joe Krause, kicking off our 2023 Jimmy Brown, following what was an incredible on-location, full one-hour event at LaSalle University. I'll give you a minute to reflect on that. It was a really, really great show, and it was a great event.
Well, it's interesting that you referenced that, Joe, because our guest today has similar operating principles to Dan Allen and Ellen Riley, the folks that basically run LaSalle University. The whole concept of servant leadership, it was a remarkable day. I thought Dan Selecki's words about having the courage to make some significant changes in our world, personally starting with each one of us as individuals, it was a phenomenal show. Spend 1 minute, if you will, and let the audience know who will be our very special guest, and then we'll get to a break and we'll pick it up on the other side. Well, Marcia O'Connor is our special guest today. Marcia is the owner and chief operating officer, the boss, let's say, the big boss at the O'Connor Group. And Joe, what appealed to me about Marcia was I was at the Kimmel Center event, the economic outlook for the Philadelphia region, and there were some real movers and shakers on the stage. The president of the Philadelphia Eagles, the CEO of Wawa, Tim Abel, the president of First Trust Bank. What blew me away was I thought Marcia's piece about career mapping and just the power of culture and what can be accomplished when people all have the same objective. That struck me. So I'm excited to welcome Marcia to the show. Can't wait to get going. All right, good stuff, Marcia. We welcome you into the program. We'll introduce you to our listening audience on the other side. Still to come also on this edition of Voices of Faith, Jimmy Brown will go one-on-one with Archbishop Nelson Perez. A very, very special message from America Media under the umbrella of Own Your Faith. And, of course, Dan Selecki will be along with his Inspirational Minute. It's a great show lined up for you. This is Voices of Faith on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Back in a moment.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Voices of Faith, presented in part by LaSalle University, the Givenish Funeral Homes, America Media, 6ABC, First Trust Bank, and our good friends Angelo Valletta and Eustace Mita.
The Catholic struggle is real. America Magazine gets you, and that's what they're here for. Let's talk about prayer, doubt, sexuality, race, life, the death penalty, and everything in between. It's time to ask the tough questions. It's time for honest conversation. It's time to #OwnYourFaith. Don't miss their exclusive interview with Pope Francis, where he answered a wide range of questions on topics from the war in Ukraine to the role of women in the church to where he finds joy. Available now on the America website. To learn more about America Magazine or to subscribe, visit americamagazine.org.
The Catholic Foundation of Greater Philadelphia is your resource for Catholic philanthropy. As we approach the season of Lent, we're reminded that this time of year in our faith is for illustrating Jesus' love for us. We do this by giving up something we value, making sacrifices for the good of others, and finding new ways to answer God's call to serve. CFGP is committed to answering this call. We serve communities throughout the 5-county Philadelphia area through charitable fund management and nonprofit development consulting. Our team works to grow the ministries of our faith through expert fundraising and help steward the philanthropy of our donors to the people and places in the greatest need. This Lenten season, answer God's call to serve and explore giving with CFGP. To donate, please visit thecfgp.org/donate.
And back here on Voices of Faith with Jimmy Brown, I'm Joe Krause. Thank you very much for tuning in to what will be another spectacular year of Voices of Faith. We'll be with you every month right here on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT. Jimmy, let's get to it, man. Let's bring in our guest.
Well, Marcia, thank you for having us out at your location today. It's a beautiful setting, and we're thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for coming over to King of Prussia today. So good to see you.
Yeah, well, it's been wonderful, kind of listening to your story from a distance. Let's try to take it a little more personal and get up front here. I referenced in the opening the economic outlook. Can you tell our listening audience a little bit about how you found your way on that stage? It was an impressive stage. I think the number was 440 guests that particular day. Special number. We'll talk about that later. But how did you find your way to that stage? Because that was a pretty powerful, not only people on the stage, but that audience you spoke to. How did you end up being there?
Thank you, Jimmy. I was very grateful to be asked by the Chamber of Philadelphia. And during COVID, I would say a good friend of mine, Jake Dawson, who's pretty involved with the Chamber, reached out and said, hey, can you help some of our members in regards to HR issues and recruiting issues and what to do? Because nobody knew what to do. We all felt helpless. So we actually used our team to help a lot of them in regards to roundtables and working through it and being that source of just understanding, especially for the HR side of the house. And I think he just thought the world of my team, and he had said, hey, would you be interested in speaking for us? And hence, we were there along with the men, shall I say.
Yeah, right. It was, as I say, it was a pretty impressive day. And later in the program, I want you to dig into the concept of career mapping. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the culture at your company. You're a female-owned operation. You have a real balance in terms of, men and women on the staff, let's say, and certainly in your client list. Tell me about your vision when you started the company.
Well, my vision was basically having a company more so geared for, I would say, working moms.
Yeah.
I've had places where they didn't really appreciate having, Johnny having a doctor's appointment at 2:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. And I can tell you, my son was about 7 years old. I was making dinner. He turned around to me and said, Mom, can I see you more? And that definitely was an impact in my heart. And I said, looked at him like, yes. We're going to make that happen. Yeah. And I've been talking about having my own business for years. And then my husband said, will you stop talking about it? Either going to do it or you're going to stop talking about it. Yeah, right. And then I read the book, The Alchemist. It was an amazing book. And I came back and I literally quit. And I said, I was starting my own. And they're like, what are you going to be doing? And I said, at first it was recruiting. And then after that, now we basically have outsourced HR, outsourced recruiting for mid-sized companies. And I'm so grateful. I have an amazing team right now of about 80 individuals, and we are all over the country. I have on average, about 140 clients we're billing a month. So it's been such an amazing journey through all this. I went through a recession and obviously like a small slowdown. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, it's funny, too, because, you had referenced a moment ago the concept of COVID, and nobody knew what the answers were. Frankly, I believe that even today, folks are struggling with that. Are we going to do a 5-hour or 5-day work week, or a 3-day or a 2-day? Talk a little bit about some of the upside of, you took lemon, and I think you made lemonade, and it's a sweet-tasting lemonade based on some of the people that I've talked to around your work. How do you stay positive in that adversity?
Well, I think it's how you wake up every morning, right? And just be thankful for what you have. And my biggest thing of a grateful is it's talking to God for me every day and saying 10 things I'm happy for. And getting out of bed, just walking and talking and feeding yourself is actually a gift. And just not until you start taking care of other people that you have to feed them that you realize it's really important to say thank you. So my team is like that. So we're big about collaboration. We're big about curiosity. Our biggest thing is giving back. One of the things that we do and we're really proud of is our Connectors Who Care program. Right. And that is a charity program that we actually represent a specific charity each month throughout the year. And that means we help them on social media. We do volunteer work. We donate funding. We collect items for them. And we choose a new one every single month. And my whole team is involved with this because a lot of them choose which charity they want to do and present for each month. So it's stuff like that. If you don't have that kind of collaboration and caring, it probably won't work with us, but we really try to make sure we can teach people. You also brought up a thing about COVID. And during COVID, my husband and I would actually take a daily walk every day in a cemetery. And it was great to just really talk about, what to do. And I said, I felt helpless. How can we help other people out there? And nobody knew what to do, what tomorrow was going to bring. And so we came up with basically, I called Megan. I said, hey, I got this idea. We are going to put out there a survival kit. And this is how you survive this stuff. And we're going to talk about HR tips and recruiting tips and be positive and get out there. And lo and behold, it just took off. And it was amazing because we went from like 3,000 followers, through that to over 12,000 followers listening to that. And now we call it basically the connector because we don't want to say survival guy. We're past that point. Yeah. But the idea was just helping other people. And one of the things we did on there is we helped other entrepreneurs that were really having a tough time surviving. Right. And the idea is that it was like free marketing for them to get out there saying, hey, help this group out here. They helped us. We're going to help them. And they would get phone calls afterwards say, thank you so much. I'm like, we are in this together. And so that was a huge piece of it. And we had groups around tables for talent acquisition. We had groups for HR, all these different groups. And we got people together, not so much so just always helping them, but we created a community that we never saw before.
Wow, that's fantastic. And my guess is, and I don't know the answer to this, but my guess is there probably were some mentors or teachers or maybe mom or dad. Tell us a little bit about, the grade school, high school, college years. Like, how am I going to navigate this insane world, which seems to be getting crazier by the moment? But talk a little bit about your history, maybe a mentor, teacher, coach that really had an impact on you.
Absolutely. I can tell, well, I'll go back a little further with that too, because my sister had cancer when she was 12. I was 10. She had a very rare, it's called Ewing sarcoma, which is a bone cancer. So she actually had a tumor attached to 3 of her ribs. Whoa. And so we spent a lot of time at Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. And my dad was blue collar, which he was an assembler at GE. And so literally for 2 years, we spent pretty much every day at Children's Hospital. So a lot of the kids that they were my best friends. And, these kids had no hair. A lot of them were going through leukemia. They're going through cancer. And actually had one of the kids, Roger, who was quadriplegic, who had taught me how to play bumper pool. So believe it or not. So all those kids were like my friends and I was their friend. And I think there was a great relationship that we had every day. But just realizing people just were different. They didn't all have to look and talk and do the same thing. But it was really just humbling because you would just, what do you need help with, and help you out. And, I was always trying to be that ray of sunshine for them. But then moving into like school and learning how to deal with people and kids and all, I definitely had my next door neighbor, Bucky, who was probably like my best mentor in my life because he had always believed in me. And even I'd walk home from school and he'd be like, I don't ever want to see you put your head down again. And he had his own magic name for me called Maggie Scratch. And so, he just was an amazing guy. He came to my baccalaureate. He came to my awards ceremony in high school. It was this is funny. You'll love this. My principal, I was real involved as a principal's aide, and I had gotten the first award ever for the principal's aide when I was graduating. And so Bucky and my mom went to the awards. My dad worked night shift, and he's like, "You should be so proud of your granddaughter." And he's like, "She's not my granddaughter. She's my grass cutter," in front of the entire audience. And I still never forget that day. But he was really proud of that.
Yeah, it's interesting how different people have impact on how we take our particular path. The other thing that's curious to me about your background is you were an accounting major, and what I've discovered as I've aged through the course of time, the people that understand the math seem to be the people that have great impacts on our community. But what really strikes me is you took that accounting background and you rolled it into HR over, I think, at Villanova. How did that all come about? Like, how did you have the insight to say, I don't want to just be able to count the money, I want to be able to communicate with the people? Talk to me about that.
Well, it's funny. When I wasn't an accounting major at first. I was actually business.
Okay.
And then my professor, who was also another mentor of mine, said to me, "You're really good at math. Why aren't you an accounting major?" And then the next thing I know, you're going to walk down with me down the hallway. We're going to change that today. And that's what happened. And
Wow.
I became an accounting major.
And that was at Widener, correct?
That was at Widener.
Yeah.
Great accounting program, by all means.
Yeah.
And they're just dear friends of me to this day.
Yeah.
But we did that. And then I was working in public accounting, and I have great friends. I started Arthur Andersen, wonderful place to start a career. And I was that one who organized all the events at our clients. I was the one, like, here, we're going to have Halloween and all. So you have to move it in. And then I went into recruiting from there.
And I just have to say this. So you graduate from, if I got this right, you graduate from Widener and you end up at Arthur Andersen. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. What's striking to me about that path is generally, the kids from the Ivy League schools end up at the Arthur Andersen. What's the backstory on that? How the heck did you go from Widener to Arthur Andersen? That's a pretty significant path. Pretty cool.
Funny story, because I had mentioned to my professor of math, that was Professor Lordi, who I adore, and I said, "What's the best accounting firm?" And he said, "Well, Andersen is up there, is probably one of the best." I said, "That's what I want." And he said, "Well, they don't really come here too much. They don't really hire too many people from Widener." I'm like, "They're going to hire me." And lo and behold, my sophomore year, I said, "Listen, they're going to get to know me." So every event they had, I was there. And I had to do the extra. I wasn't, the big Ivy Leagues. And I knew that, and I got turned down. But because I stayed in contact, I followed up, I did whatever it took, they knew my name by that senior year. And I was the only one to get an offer from Arthur Andersen my senior year.
Unbelievable. We'll take a break, allow you to get a glass of water right now, but that, to me, speaks volumes about the success that you've been able to achieve in the course of your career.
Thanks, Jimmy.
This is Voices of Faith, broadcasting to you on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Back in a moment.
Our message of faith and hope on this edition of Voices of Faith is presented by Mike Cleary of TAC Benefits, Mike Troy of KTB Benefits, and Dr. Jerry Cleary. We continue to honor his incredible work.
Every drive starts somewhere. For First Trust Bank, our drive started in Philadelphia and continues to this day. As Philly's hometown bank for more than 85 years, we know this city's people. We understand their passions, and we work our tails off to help them reach their goals every day. Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank. First Trust Bank, the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. Member FDIC.
Still to come on Voices of Faith, Jimmy Brown goes one-on-one with Archbishop Nelson Perez, and then we'll wrap up the show with a message from America Media. Own your faith. We continue pushing the narrative from America Media right into 2023. Jimmy, all yours, sir.
Welcome back. I'm glad you got a chance to take a little sip of water there, Marcia. I want to continue the Widener, Arthur Andersen, then Villanova piece of the puzzle, piece of the journey. Earlier in the conversation, you referenced The Alchemist. I would say that's a spiritual book. What about that book really struck you?
So, funny story about that book. When I was working in a different company, somebody had said, you would really do well with reading The Alchemist. And I said, no, really? Like, why? And it said, it would become you. And so I kept saying, I got to get that book. I have to get that book. And I kept talking about this book. Lo and behold, I come in work one day, and that book was on my desk.
Wow.
And I said, okay, so God's telling me I need to read this book. And so I actually went on a family vacation, and I said, I'm going to read this book on this vacation, and I did. And I read the whole book. I was like, oh my God, like this spoke to me, saying, this is what I've been needing to say. I have to do this in my life now, or always say coulda, shoulda, would've, which is just not in my vocabulary. And so I came back, and I said I quit, and they were surprised, and I said, I'm going to do it. And then when you start your very first day, when you you actually have a computer and you have a phone, and there's no phone calls coming in. There's nothing, except Target coupon, ads coming in your internet. And so you have to just say, how do you make the phone ring? Is you pick up the phone. And I had to go through all my business cards and say, let's have breakfast, let's have lunch, let's have coffee. And it just started, and I had a good prior place I worked at. They said, you know what, we believe in you, and we're going to give you your first search, and you can run it and take it.
So that's amazing. So your launch pad was your former employer, correct?
Yeah.
It's funny, and I hope you know this about yourself. The capacity to maintain friendships during those transitions, they're remarkable. I'm a big fan of Polo, the gentleman who wrote The Alchemist. One of my favorite quotes is, wherever your heart is, that's where your treasure lies. And it appears to me that based on short conversations off the air with you, you've had a couple different pieces of your journey, and yet the common ground is, your treasure is in your heart. Talk a little bit about that and how you started with, a high school and then a college professor relationship. Now there's a work relationship. How does that common theme continue to run through the course of your life?
Well, I think it's you got to be happy where you're at, not what you don't have, but what you can do in life and how you can make a difference. And I think, I'm a big believer in faith as well, and I went to church every Sunday, every holy day. I mean, you name it.
You did your thing.
And my dad and I were very tight, but I think it was more along the lines of, it's just how can I give back and what else can I do for somebody else? So I think I've always had that as a kid, and I don't think it'll ever go away, but I feel as if I get such a wonderful feeling of helping people, and there's really nothing like it. And so I think you got to do it, and your team sees it. So as a leader of my team now, I have to make sure that I'm telling them, like, you got this, and we can do this, and we're moving this forward, and we're doing this as a team. And sometimes I think I freak them out a little bit, because I'm like, we're like, what are we doing now? And I'm like, no, we're going to make an impact. We're going to make a change on this. And just like that. But you have to use your heart, and you have to be real about it, because there's a lot of people who aren't. And
it's funny, again, offline we've had conversation, and to me it strikes that it always goes back to that, I'll say, common theme of faith. And it's stunning to me that each one of these roadblocks that maybe you've encountered, you've, again, taken the lemon and made lemonade. In our break, I quickly referenced your sister. I know that she recovered from that cancer thing. We talked about that, but tell us about the end of her story, or the part of her story that impacted you most at her age of 21, let's say.
So my sister had her own issues, but both of us were adopted very young, and my sister was adopted first, and I was adopted second, and my sister, unfortunately, just had this thing of the world owed you. And I had to think of I owe the world. And so I think that was the big difference between the two of us. And so she ended up having 6 children in total. And she ended up, married twice. And she just had a lot of, I would say, probably demons, in her life that she couldn't get out of her way. And then basically met another person, and she ended up dying because he killed her. So so it was really it was hard in my family. I'm the one who had to tell my dad, and that was really a hard thing to do. But and then I'm the one she was out in California at the time everything happened, and my nieces and nephews were out there, and we hadn't heard from them for about 6 months. And then we figured out that a guidance counselor called me up and said, "Hey, are you the aunt to 3 boys and a girl?" And I said, "Yes, I am. Where are you calling from?" And it said, "Out in California." And I said, "Okay, oh, wow. Okay. Well, at least I know where they're at and they're alive, And then the next call, my sister had called, and I'm like, how's California? And she said, she's like, I need help and I need to take care of my kids for a year. And I said, well, I'll help them if you come back. And it was a long thing. It was really very difficult in my life. I was about 27.
Yeah.
And then my father said to me, like, this is a lot. You haven't even gotten engaged yet, and you're seeing a really good guy. And, you're just going to make sure this is a big impact in your life. And so one of the things I promised that I would never not be in their lives, and I still am to this day, all of them. And I'm probably like their little beacon sometimes.
Their go-to person. How did your faith, you don't get through these things without, the prayers that we've referenced offline. Yeah. How did your faith impact you during that piece of the journey?
I would say that I asked God to be, I'm your vehicle.
Yeah.
Tell me what I need to do. Yeah. And I had to be there early for my father more than anybody else. And I'm the one who had to make sure, like, I'd brought the casket back from Pennsylvania, set up the arrangements here for the funeral. I had to pick out the dress what she was going to wear in the coffin. Yeah. So it was hard. It was hard. But I've I don't know, I've got broad shoulders, and I feel like I have people, and I feel like God's always holding my hand. And I think that's my motto in life. And I've got a great song out there that my team knows. It's called Hold Your Hand. And I always say it's not about a person. It's about God holding my hand. Yeah,
it's interesting because, again, all the adversity that you faced in your life, to be able to have the success that you have right now, it's fascinating to me that you're able to, not only make that journey, but put some real sunshine in the journey. The idea that the glass really is half full. I'm going to track back to business for just a minute because I think this is critical in connection to what you just shared. Did I read it correctly that 90% of your business comes from referrals? Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yeah, I would say we've got a bigger sales team now, so that number's getting a little smaller because my sales team kicks butt out there. But I would say we definitely have a lot of our clients that refer us out there, which I'm so thankful for. So it's great.
And the beauty of that is lots of people talk about culture. Lots of people talk about servant leadership and really delivering the goods for clients. It's stunning to me that 90%, and as you say, things are changing now as the company grows, but that's a pretty big testament to what you've achieved. Not just in your own business, but spreading that good nature through the course of the community. Are there a handful of clients, that you would say, Jimmy, I have 3, 4, 8, 10 clients that really, are the absolute best fit, and then that's how you built to, what did you say, 140 clients right now?
About 140 a month. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So talk about the guys that got you going and how that's kind of grown through those referrals and how it supported the culture that you've created here.
Yeah, I would say, talking about the business side, it's really, we're outsourced HR, outsourced recruiting. So we really help companies basically with their whole infrastructure and their HR. And we really try to make sure it's smooth, operating, and efficient. And then the recruiting side, we're hourly, so it's a little bit different, and I think people get all confused about that. But the model is amazing, and I tell people it's never going to cost you. It's going to cost you probably 60% less than what you pay for a contingent side of the house. And sometimes they're hard. They find that hard to believe, and until they basically say, "Give me one role," and then they say, "Oh my gosh, now I know what they're talking about." And these are high-end level positions. These are 140, 160, 180 roles that we basically fill probably within 50 hours. And if you do an hourly rate, you do the math, it saves a lot of money. Right.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so that gets back to the referral piece of the puzzle. Is there anything that you want our listening audience to know about the O'Connor Group, something that we haven't covered just yet?
I would say basically, we just opened up in Raleigh and Tampa, so we're growing and expanding what we're trying to do. Got an amazing team that really helps out. But I would say for HR, it's, if you think your HR is a little weak or needs some little help with it, get it moving. But we really try to be out there. We're very involved with EO, which is the Entrepreneurs Organization, and they are basically based all throughout the world, but they're all entrepreneurs. And I would say most of my clients are entrepreneurs, and they just don't know what they don't know because their expertise is not around HR recruiting, and that's where we come in and help them out with all of that.
How do you build trust so quickly? It appears to me, again, from the outside looking in, you've built a pretty big mountain here, especially in light of what we just experienced with COVID, let's say. How do you build trust that quickly?
You know what? You just be real, be who you are. And I always tell people, what can I do for you? And it's not about what you can do for me. I've had a lot of people like that. It's when we're like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? It's not about us making an invoice or having you as a client, but it's more like, if I can help you sleep better, eat better, dream better, I've done my job. And if I have one person going home happy, that means they're happy at home. That means they're happy with their kids. That means that they're sleeping better, then we did our job.
I know that you're a sports person. I know that your husband's a baseball coach at a pretty prominent school here in the region. And there's a wonderful sports saying that says, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes. It's a male coach. But anyway, I think that's the way we should end our show. And I appreciate your time with us today.
All right, good stuff, Jimmy Brown. Well done, Marcia. Nice job from the offices of the O'Connor Group. We'll ask Marcia to stay with us and close up the show with us. On the other side of the break, Dan Selecki will be along with his inspirational message. And then Jimmy Brown, one-on-one with Archbishop Nelson Perez. Back in a moment.
We continue now with an inspirational endorsement from Dan Selecki of Givnish Funeral Homes.
St. Paul, in one of his letters to the Ephesians, writes, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespasses, according to the riches of his grace, which he lavished upon us, in all wisdom and insight, making known to us the mystery of his will, according to his purpose, which he set forth in Christ as a plan for the fullness of time." This is Dan Selecki, Chief Operating Officer for Life Celebration by Givnish. We see between 250 to 3,000 advertisements every day, according to estimations. Assuming that you sleep 6 hours, because no one really sleeps 8 anymore, that's anywhere from 14 to 163 ads an hour. If you were awake for 8 hours before listening to this program, that's roughly 115 to 1,300 ads that you saw today already. But we don't stop and think about how these advertisements train us to view the world. We don't think about what they are teaching us. Most of these ads try to convince us that we are missing a product or service that we need, that our lives would be more enjoyable or more fun or less complicated if we had it. Our consumeristic culture is based on getting you and me to believe that we are missing something in our lives that we need, that we don't have enough. Have we taken this approach in our spiritual life? Many of us already feel that we are missing something. Even though we are Christians, we don't necessarily walk around feeling like we have enormous blessings from God. We walk around wishing we had more from God. My message today is to believe God does provide for us, as Paul states, through the riches of his grace, which he lavished upon us. God is not withholding anything. Everything we have through his grace is enough. So let's turn the TV off for a while and count our blessings. Remember, it's not how big the house is, it's how happy the home is. If you haven't been in someone else's shoes, don't try to tell them how to tie their own laces. And everything material can be gone in the blink of an eye. As always, stay safe, my friends, and may God bless you all.
Well, we're here again with Archbishop Perez. And Archbishop Perez, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's great to be here again.
It's always a pleasure to connect. So many wonderful seasons in our Catholic faith. I think the Lenten season, for me personally, is just an absolute pinnacle of my faith, meaning the concept of reflection and so forth. Can you talk about that the context of Lent in those words, reflection?
Well, you know, Lent, actually, it's interesting. In English, Lent comes from an old English word that actually means springtime.
Wow.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so what do we do in springtime? We clean up the gardens from the winter.
Yes.
Right? The old leaves and twigs and this and that.
Right.
And then we begin to till the soil, right? To put in new life. And so Lent is that, in a sense, for the Christian soul, is every year is a springtime, right?
Yeah.
Going back to the garden of our soul to see, what's crept in there over time.
Yeah.
And plant new seeds of life, And for those who are baptized, Lent is a time of kind of like a retreat.
Yeah.
As we walk towards the Easter Vigil and Easter Sunday to renew our baptismal promises.
Yes.
It's also a time, as it was in the ancient church, that it was a 40-day kind of retreat where the elect, those who were named to elect to receive the Easter sacraments, well, it would be a time of intense prayer.
Yeah.
Precisely in preparation for their baptism. For us, is a renewal of our baptismal promises. For those who are being baptized, it is a time of intensity. Yeah. Right? Of leaving behind the things that are not of God and embracing the things that are.
And it's funny because that's pretty much been my practice for many, many years. Yet when you arrived in this community, I thought you were really terrific about talking to us about the concept of missionary discipleship and your vision about, like, Jimmy, don't just focus on you. How are you doing? How about sharing that with community? Talk about missionary discipleship.
In renewing our baptism on Easter Sunday, we're renewing our discipleship.
Yeah.
But discipleship is connected to mission.
Amen.
Right? So it's not just about me and Jesus.
Right.
Right? It's about me and the world.
Right.
As well. So, throughout most of Jesus' public ministry, he was about come.
Yeah.
Come and follow me, right?
Right.
However, his last words on the Mount of Olives before he ascends into the heavens was actually go.
Yeah.
It wasn't come, it was now go. Come and then go.
Right.
And so there's an intimate connection, as our Holy Father, Pope Francis, talks about, between being a disciple and being a missionary. And that you can't really have one without the other.
Right.
And the church has always really taught that, right?
Yes.
That's why you and I sit where we are sitting, because those that came before us, were sent to share with us what they themselves have received. If not, we wouldn't even be here today.
Well, it's funny because I think in many instances that's restricted to a family community. And what I love about the vision you have for us as a community is, tell everybody you can talk to.
Absolutely, yeah. It's go to all the nations, right? That's what he said to the apostles. He didn't say go down to downtown Jerusalem.
No way. And I love the concept of Go Forth. Can you tell us a little bit about Go Forth? What is Go Forth?
So Go Forth is an initiative that we're launching in the Archdiocese on Ash Wednesday, in which we're going to be sending a text message, right? Going out broad.
Right.
And through our social media, that will have this missionary discipleship challenge once a week.
Right.
Right. So it's like go forth, and I'm going to send in Spanish and English this exercise to deepen. Here's the challenge for the week: to deepen your relationship with Christ and to exercise your calling to be a missionary.
So in other words, I think what you're saying to us is, so Jimmy Brown, do me a favor. Don't just go to church on Sunday and be great.
Talk to one person.
Yeah, exactly.
This week about what you see, what you saw, and what you heard.
Amen.
That could be a challenge. So there's going to be, or it could be, knock on your neighbor's door and just say hi.
Right.
And tell them that Christ loves them, Yeah. So each week, a challenge is going to go out related to being a missionary disciple.
And you and I have talked offline about random acts of kindness. Just be a good neighbor. Go out and knock on the door and say, hey, my faith has driven me to a place where I haven't seen you out and about, Mrs. Smith. Can I go do grocery shopping for you? Is that?
Yeah, it could be that. It could, that's going to be the surprise, right?
Yeah.
Because every week there will be a missionary discipleship challenge that will go out wide.
Wow.
And people will hear it. And only God and the person will know if the person lived up to the challenge or not.
Right.
And so if you're interested, text Go Forth at 84576 and sign up. Or you can visit, phillydisciples.org and sign up to receive this missionary discipleship challenge every week for a year.
Wow. So I'm going to repeat that. We're going to text Go Forth to 84576. 84576.
That's
84576. You know, it's really interesting, too, because in my walk, I know a lot of people who will say to me, boy, Jimmy, you know, I give up chocolate for Lent, or I give up meat for Lent. This is so cool because this is another version of a practice that demonstrates a habit that creates, I'll say, strength in our community.
Absolutely, yeah. Oftentimes Lent is a time to, people talk about that. I'm going to give up tasty cakes.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, you know, but ultimately I say to people, God doesn't need your tasty cakes. He created them. You know?
Exactly.
He really doesn't need your tasty cakes. What he needs is your heart.
Yeah.
Now, giving up the tasty cakes makes you a better disciple and a better missionary and a better Christian and human being than give up the tasty cakes. But giving up the tasty cakes for in and of itself and not go to church on Sunday, well, forget the tasty cakes. Get yourself to church on Sunday and receive the Eucharist.
Yeah, or go to the Acme supermarket and buy the sweets for Mrs. Jones.
For somebody else.
Yeah.
But, ultimately, the fundamental practices of Lent are prayer, almsgiving, and fasting.
Right.
Right? The traditional. We'll hear it on Ash Wednesday, right? Prayer, just very, very basics. Prayer, generosity, and fasting. Yeah. But again, all those things are really a means to an end.
Right.
They're not an end in and of themselves. They are ends to deepen our relationship with Christ and our mission in the world.
Yeah, and I think the essence of why Jesus came to our planet was to change the world. Certainly he's had his impact, Mm-hmm. And the question in my heart, for me personally, is what am I doing to change the world? You know, am I just accepting status quo, or am I going to move to a different level? I love the Go Forth message.
Yeah, so sign up, and I think it'll be wonderful. It'll be great.
Yeah. Back to you, Joe.
All right, good stuff, Jimmy Brown and Archbishop Nelson Perez. If you want to subscribe, by the way, in Spanish, Archbishop Perez, you can put that message out for me now.
Yes, vayan pues, y pueden mandarlo a 202-756-3441. El texto, vayan pues, es al 202-765-3441.
All right, good stuff. And if you want to subscribe, again, text Go Forth to 84576.
The Catholic Foundation of Greater Philadelphia is your resource for Catholic philanthropy. As we approach the season of Lent, we're reminded that this time of year in our faith is for illustrating Jesus' love for us. We do this by giving up something we value, making sacrifices for the good of others, and finding new ways to answer God's call to serve. CFGP is committed to answering this call. We serve communities throughout the 5-county Philadelphia area through charitable fund management and nonprofit development consulting. Our team works to grow the ministries of our faith through expert fundraising and help steward the philanthropy of our donors to the people and places in the greatest need. This Lenten season, answer God's call to serve and explore giving with CFGP. To donate, please visit thecfgp.org/donate.
The Catholic struggle is real. America Magazine gets you, and that's what they're here for. Let's talk about prayer, doubt, sexuality, race, life, the death penalty, and everything in between. It's time to ask the tough questions. It's time for honest conversation. It's time to #own your faith. Don't miss their exclusive interview with Pope Francis, where he answered a wide range of questions on topics from the war in Ukraine to the role of women in the church to where he finds joy. Available now on the America website. To learn more about America Magazine or to subscribe, visit americamagazine.org.
Introducing a groundbreaking national campaign, #OwnYourOwnFaith. Provided by America Media in partnership with Voices of Faith. America Media invites you to listen, engage, and own your faith.
Hi, this is James T. Keene. I'm a senior editor at America Media in New York. I oversee our literary issues as well as our book reviews in the magazine and our Catholic book club. This coming month, April, our print issue is our spring books issue, which means we have a special focus on books at America, because we're a journal that covers faith, religion, the arts, spirituality, politics, a lot of different subjects. We try to have the book reviews also reflect that. So we have kind of an eclectic mix of books in this issue. The lead book review is a double review of 2 audio books by maybe unlikely people for us normally to cover, that being Bono of U2 and then Bob Dylan. And they both have books out that have been released as print books, but also audio books. And both have been selling very well. Bono's is more of an autobiography that he tells through stories about his life and through the songs of U2. And then Dylan's is more of a look through musical influences on him throughout the years. And that is, like Dylan himself, a kind of a quixotic venture. We have another review of a book called Botticelli's Secret, which is about the artist Botticelli's attempt to illustrate Dante's Paradiso and Inferno, and basically the whole Divine Comedy, and the historical process behind that, and the beautiful art that came from that, and the success and failure of that whole venture. And then a popular novelist who many of our readers might know is Cormac McCarthy. He wrote the novel The Road, which was made into a very popular movie a few years ago. He is in his 9th decade now and has 2 novels that just came out. So we have a long review of those on both his background and the themes that run through his novels, which often have a kind of apocalyptic take, an eschatological take on the end of the world, and that can be seen in these 2 novels as well. Then we have a review of a book called Father Ed by Dawn Eden Goldstein, which I just found out this morning has won a Christopher Award. And Father Ed is the story of Father Ed Dowling, who was a Jesuit priest who was a big influence on Bill Wilson, the famous Bill W. of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Dawn Eden Goldstein shows how Father Ed's spirituality had a certain influence on Bill W.'s 12 steps, which have become famous in all sorts of recovery movements, and then also on Dowling's very interesting career. Then our final review in that issue is a poetry roundup of poetry from the last 2 years, put together by our staff. It covers all sorts of different poetry, from more traditional forms to a more slam poetry, more popular in recent years, some religious themes, some not. And the sum total of all of that makes up our Spring Books content. At the same time, we also run the Catholic Book Club, which is a online-based group that reads 4 books a year. Sometimes it's a novel, sometimes it's a biography. One time we did an anthology of plays. Recently we did one on 2 books about basketball. But our current selection is a book out of Ireland by Seamus O'Reilly, which is a very funny but also very dark sort of comic memoir with the title, Did You Hear Mammy Died? And if that sounds irreverent, it's because the book is irreverent. It is his account of finding out when he was a very young boy in his family of 11 children that his mother had passed, and then the sort of foibles and funny but also poignant stories of what it was like to grow up in a single-parent home like that with so many kids, and during a time of great political turmoil and crisis in Ireland. He's from Northern Ireland, and so the stories of the troubles there runs in and out of the book, as do stories of religious content in a sort of very, what I would consider a typically Irish way of being both very sort of soaked in the Catholic faith, but at the same time, a certain habit of poking fun at religion in ways that we would not necessarily in the United States. And so we will be reading that for the next few months, and that we have an online discussion group for that. If you want to join the group, you can just Google America Catholic Book Club. You'll see our launch page. You'll probably see a link to our Facebook group, and anyone is welcome to join that. We also have a weekly newsletter that goes out with a review of a new author. We'll feature a different author every week.
One last time, back here on Voices of Faith with my partner, Jimmy Brown, our special guest today from inside the O'Connor group. Jimmy, and before I go to Marcia to get a thought from her before we close up the show, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up the show today.
Joe, I know I sound like a broken record. Here I go again. Each time we sit down to talk with someone like Marcia, I'm moved, and it impacts me not just in the moment, but it's a reflection. It brings reflections to me that will last a lifetime. And Marcia, can't thank you enough for your time this afternoon. It's been an absolute joy getting a little closer to you and your operation.
Thank you, Jimmy.
All right, good stuff from Jimmy Brown. Marcia, I'll come to you. I always save 30 seconds. The best for last is true on Voices of Faith. I'll give you the final 30 seconds before I say goodbye.
Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for having you guys come out today and do this. I think it's great. And I think it's great what you guys are delivering out there. I think people need to hear stories of faith, but not only that, but knowing that people care about them and knowing that there's a hand out there and there's somebody else that's listening. If it can impact one person out there, it's completely worth it because someone's always watching you. And you have to keep in mind, whether it's from above or around you, you have a chance to make a difference in this world. I don't care your background. I don't care if you have money, you don't have money. You know, you got to look at basically what do you want to do, what's your legacy, and how you want to live your life. So to me, it's like live it with gratitude and be happy. And every day is going to be a challenge, but you just got to say, you know what, today is a great day. I'm going to make it greater. And tomorrow is going to be a better day. But to make the most of it.
All right, well done and well stated to wrap up this edition of Voices of Faith. And as we close out the show, we'll ask the audience to use theater of the mind as we broadcast in front of a live audience at the O'Connor group. So we shout out to Barb, Meg, and Mike joining us here. And along, of course, Dan Selecki sitting in today as well. That's going to do it for this edition of Voices of Faith. On behalf of my partner, Jimmy Brown, I'm Joe Krause. Believe in hope, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to this special edition of Voices of Faith in collaboration with the Catholic business leaders of the Delaware Valley and the Archbishop of Philadelphia. Supported by America Media, 6ABC, LaSalle High School, and First Trust Bank. First Trust Bank invites you to download today's show from YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. Simply search Voices of Faith, a Jacob Media, J.P. Brown Communications production. This program is paid for by Jacob Media Partners. All opinions or statements expressed on this program are solely those of Jacob Media or its guests and do not reflect the views of WPHT or Odyssey. Today's program is pre-recorded.